on their own have been taking that extra mile to achieve anything beyond the BRSR mandate. But having said
अभी
that,
देख
the top
वो म्यूट किया था
listed companies on which
आ रहे ओके ओके ओके
many
दिख
of
रहा है हमारा
them
नहीं गया
show very
ओके
significant
आया
also the
थैंक
commitment to fulfill the BRSR
यू ये
mandate.
ना
From the
माइक्रोसॉफ्ट
mind,
अरे
but they need a lot of resistance to
ये क्या म्यूट
achieving
हुआ
those goals. Today, ESG is
थैंक यू बोलो
being
उसको
looked up
थैंक यू बोल
majorly
मेरे तरफ से नहीं मैं अभी बोल
industrial and the manufacturing and
कुछ भी है
as a CSR activity, which is really not integrated into the business strategy of the company. But what in these conferences, what we want to emphasize that the ESG or the BRSR is just a way, a tool to achieve bigger goals, bigger strategic goals of the company or the entity in a rapidly changing environment, rapidly changing world. Whether it is access to green finance, which is a very immediate goal, but also to prove that as a responsible entity, we are committed to the global environment and the country's goal of net zero by 2070. Our industry partner, Indian Potter's Limited, many may not be knowing the fertilizer sector company. It's not a listed company, but it is a company led by top cooperatives of the country. It is the first company to take steps to convert red mud, very hazardous waste material produced by the companies to the factories, to convert it into bio-CNG and sell its products to the Indian Oil Corporation as bio-CNG. So
टेन सेकेंड
we
के लिए
are we have amongst us Indian Motors Limited is just one of them. There are many companies which we know, even though they are not under the BRSR mandate, they are outside the top 1,000, but they are doing a lot of good work and showing their commitment to carry out the ESG mandate. Coming to the BRSR specific compliances, during the day today, the distinguished delegates, this discussion today was to highlight how we can strategize BRSR mandate compliance as a business strategy to achieve bigger growth, bigger commitment to environmental outcomes and sustainability goals.
ये भी सुन
We have amongst us, we are very happy that we received very enthusiastic response from across the industry in Mumbai, in Western India, if it is from Karnataka, Maharashtra or Gujarat. We have not been able to accommodate all the interested companies who wanted to register or wanted to participate in this conference because of space constraints, but also we have plans to come back to similar conference for future. But in the meanwhile, I would like to also mention that the BRSR mandate assistance which NPC provides based on its long experience of working in energy, water, waste management, environment areas. We call it Saptapadi. The Saptapadi is an end-to-end service provision which we do. Whether it is environmental, social, or governance oriented activities under the BRSR, those kind of services will be provided. Without adding much more, I would like to conclude this welcome to all of you. During the course of this inaugural session, we expect the chairperson of SEBI, she is also told that she will come and deliver a special address under the BRSR. Uh, we look forward to listening to all of you and also interacting in the course of the day and learning from what are your views and how we can be of help. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you very much, sir. May I now introduce Shri Rajiv Jalota ji, IAS, Chairman, Mumbai Port Authority. Shri Jalota joined Indian Administrative Services in 1988 and his current rank is of Secretary to Government of India. While in service, Mr. Jalota completed his Masters in International Development Policy from Duke University, USA. Mr. Jalota was awarded with the PM Award for Excellence in Public Administration in 2017 as part of a team of officials which worked for bringing DST to reality. Mr. Jalota is also chairperson of Indian Ports Association. With these words, I request sir to please address the committee.
Good morning to everybody. Dear Sir Shri Sandeep Naik, Dr. Sujit Kumar Bajpayee, Dr. Sushma Ketkar, Dr. P.S. Gahlot, and all esteemed dignitaries attending this national conference of ESG. It is my great privilege to be attending this conference and enriching myself with thoughtful insights from the practitioners of ESG. It is evident from what Mr. Sandeep Naik spoke that responsible and sustainable growth is what the society, which is led by the millennials and the investors, are looking at, and all stakeholders need to be future ready for ESG and also to be resilient against future risks. SEBI mandated business responsibility and sustainable reporting has been a guide to the public and private companies towards aligning their actions for a long-term sustainability perspective. With a focus on the life cycle approach, circularity, and resource efficiency, we are at the cusp of unleashing practice for bettering our ESG goals. For a modern, futuristic, and also a safe and sustainable maritime sector, the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways unveiled its decadal action plan through Maritime India Vision 2030, the document that was released at the hands of Honorable Prime Minister in early 2021. The major ports, which are directly governed by the Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways, have to achieve 60% of its energy use through renewable sources. More than 50% of fossil fuel that is presently being used by all its equipments at these ports are to be shifted to alternate green fuel, and the vessels being used at the ports are also to be gradually shifted to alternate green fuels. The port processes have to be optimized with the digitalization while ensuring ease of doing business and reducing cost of doing business. Maritime India Vision 2030 actually entails a detailed master plan for all these 12 major ports of the country to show the way how maritime sector can be decarbonized in a gradual fashion. For Mumbai Port, which has a legacy of 150 years, the transformation towards ESG compliance and becoming a carbon neutral port is being spearheaded through several initiatives. On the environment front, we are in the process of creating a GHG inventory of the port and port allied operational assets and its various operations. This will be a foundation for our net zero strategy and sustainability projects going forward in parallel. Mumbai Port is also implementing multiple decarbonization. So on the oil tankers, those big vessels, the very large oil carriers docking at the oil terminals of Mumbai port, which are catering to HPCL and BPCL oil refineries in Mumbai. We have at Mumbai port installed solar rooftop systems at 11 buildings and godowns with a combined capacity of 1.4 megawatts. Mumbai port is attempting to go on 100% green power for its port operations in the next 6 to 8 months. Smart lighting on high mast towers, energy saving devices are similar other initiatives to reduce the carbon footprint of the port operations. Mumbai port is also supporting the reuse of dredged material from the bed of the Mumbai harbour for reuse, and this experiment is being conducted by IIT Bombay, where industrial waste of nearby industries will be brought by barges, and along with municipal waste of Mumbai and Navi Mumbai, this experiment for reuse of waste to reduce environment footprint has been sponsored by the R&D fund of our Ministry of Port Shipping and Waterways. Going forward, Mumbai Port is envisaging the use of hybrid tugs, pilot and mooring launches for its port operations so as to reduce its fossil fuel consumption. Mumbai Port is also part of the Pod Shipping Task Force, and under this task force, Mumbai Port is attempting to implement a green shipping corridor, a pilot to implement sustainable technologies on a coastal route to decarbonize the route while also initiating best practices for a green port. Mumbai Port is also promoting coastal shipping and urban water transport as a cheaper and sustainable alternative to road transport. On the social front, Mumbai Port is also making key contributions. We all know that Mumbai Port is home to two major fishing harbors in this part of India, the Sassoon Dock and Bhaucha Dhaka. Under the Sagarmala program, development of coastal communities is a key objective. Under this program, Mumbai Port is developing its fish jetty at Mallet Bandar for a capacity of 1200 fishing trawlers, and the area adjacent to the fish jetty is being planned to promote fish tourism in line with Sydney Harbour. A larger project for making Sassoon Dock a world-class fish tourism destination is under planning by Ministry of Fisheries, Ministry of
40
Ports,
रुपया
Shipping
नीचे
and Waterways, and Government of Maharashtra. Mumbai Port is promoting Mumbai as the cruise capital of India. With cruise tourism, Mumbai will benefit in terms of increased tourism opportunities as well as employment opportunities. Skill development for cruise operations is an area of focus, and we are working closely with institutions to improve employability of the fishing and coastal community. Mumbai Port is in midst of major transformation in terms of governance. With the passing of the Major Port Authority Act 2021, Mumbai Port is implementing various compliances under the new act. This has set in motion a process of examining and re-engineering legacy processes which are no longer relevant in the current times. Transparency and accessibility of information is a non-negotiable as a public institution, and Mumbai Port is implementing the state-of-art port enterprise business solution system with a suite of digital port and administration modules to make the organization 100% digital and paperless. Going forward, the system will be integrated with AI-based automated berth allocation systems, GIS-based land management systems, data analytics-based business intelligence systems, etc. Use of drones for monitoring safety of dock workers is also under advanced planning stage. Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways and Mumbai Port Authority is moving boldly in its transition towards ESG-based management of shipping and port processes. I really applaud Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India, and National Productivity Council under DPIIT, which has jointly organized this national conference on ESG for industry transformation. I invite all the industry players and leaders of ESG to join in this conversation for this inspirational change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. May I now introduce our next speaker, Dr. P.S. Gangwar, Managing Director, Indian Potash Limited. Dr. Gangwar holds postgraduate diploma in marketing management from the University of Delhi, followed by PhD in business management from Indian American University, Florida. He joined Indian Potash Limited in 1985 as a general manager and has served IPL in different capacities before assuming the charge of managing director in 1997. Under the leadership of Dr. Gelo, IPL has grown from a single product trading company with a very small equity base to a well-diversified conglomerate, which is all set to achieve turnover of more than 30,000 crores in present financial year, with interest in fertilizers, sugar, biofuels, bioenergy, and dairy. Sir, I request you to please address the matter.
नमस्कार श्री संदीप कुमार नायक जी, श्री राजीव जलोटा जी, मैडम सुषमा केसकर, श्री वाजपेयी, श्री युक्तेश नंदन जी, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great privilege to be called upon to participate in this workshop and express views of the industry on ESG. The words like climate change, environmental damage, melting of glaciers, rising seawater temperatures, etc., looked remote and distant not very long ago. Consequently, the awareness among policy planners, corporates, and public at large remained muted. Government of India now is engaging at multilateral fora, and these frequent interactions have drawn the attention of the world to all these burning issues bedeviling the planet today. During Corona, which devastated economies, caused a lot of human misery, the concerns got further aggravated. Unseasonal flooding, rise in temperatures, which we are experiencing closer home, have brought this big threat to our livelihoods. As most of you who have lived in North India will know that we had very hot February and March months, and the result was that wheat production fell 6%, sugar recovery in North India fell by almost 8%, and what is worse is that in some of the districts, the loss was as high as 10%. This year, we had hot February and March. There is no guarantee that we will not have hot November and December next year. If that happens, we may not have even germination of wheat. So threat and dangers are real. Change in climate is affecting ready crops because of unseasonal rains, unseasonal flooding, etc. And it is only now that the public at large, government, policy formulators are all concerned about these issues who started contributing in their own way. The industry, no doubt, is a major user of all natural resources. And there are not just allegations but identifiable evidences that there is misuse, overuse of all these resources, be it water, energy, forests, coal mining, etc. etc. Developing energy efficient practices for both production and utilization of output of the industry can directly contribute to Atmanirbharta or self-reliance. All our energy sources, barring the green energy and biomass-based energy, we are dependent on imports. Be it for production of fertilizers, be it for production of power, we have been importing coal, crude, gas, CNG, etc., in various degrees over the years. The import dependence has remained fairly high and has not come down in spite of efforts of the government because of limitations of natural resources within the country. Agriculture, with which my company is involved, is also a major consumer of energy because all fertilizer production, especially nitrogen, is produced from naphtha, oil, and imported CNG. These are also known to be causing a lot of environmental damage because fertilizer use efficiency continues to be low, and it may come as unpleasant information to some of you that urea fertilizer, of which this country consumes about 35 million tons, the use efficiency is as low as 29%, 30%. So 70% of fertilizer used, urea fertilizer used, goes to either pollute air or water. And it is heavily subsidized also. So we have to all work towards developing technologies, science, and there has to be much greater emphasis on R&D. Compliance of ESG guidelines, etc., is just one part. But ultimately, the results on the ground will come only with much bigger investment in science, technology, and R&D. For example, in fertilizers, can we have seeds which will need much less water or which will need much less fertilizer use? Some research is going on, but this requires very big joint effort by industry, by government, and even by international agencies. This is absolutely essential because for feeding 8 billion people today, we have to have fertilizer use to produce the required food in fiber. Sri Lanka, as most of you will know, tried to do away with chemical fertilizer use with not too pleasant consequences. My company, as the introduction part mentioned, is in the fields of fertilizer, sugar, and dairy, all of which are in agriculture and rural development. We are trying to improve things by combination of chemical fertilizers and organic fertilizers. The company is involved in research work with IARI, whereby we are trying to reduce fertilizer use by balanced use of fertilizers. By we are not recommending that organic fertilizers are substitutes, but supplements to chemical and mineral fertilizers. As Shri Nayak mentioned, we are also producing bio-CNG from waste product called press mud in sugar industry. We have commissioned the first of its type plant in the country. About 10 tons of gas is produced daily and 40 tons of organic manure, which we blend with chemical fertilizers and sell to farmers with much better results. Indian fertilizer industry now is at crossroads because subsidy, which was about 70,000 crores till recently, is expected to touch 2,50,000 crore rupees this year. It is not a question of whether WTO permits this or not, but can the country afford this? That is the issue. And obviously, this is unsustainable. And again, I emphasize that solution is in more and more investments in science and technology and R&D. Coming to the second part, the social part, it's a matter of great pleasure that many of the international companies have started rewarding producers who comply with the requirements laid down by international agencies. We supply refined and fine sugar to many of the food and beverage companies, pharma companies, and we also export to many African countries. Most of these companies come for what they call a social audit. They want to make sure that every employee in the company engaged in that part, in that activity, is ensured whether he has a regular job, has he been made aware of his rights, etc. etc. They also ensure that even a security guard has an appointment letter and is given social benefits. So compliance with ESG is something that is being recognized and rewarded by responsible buyers. Governance part, Sri Nayak has adequately touched. BRSR mandates top 1,000 companies, but many companies outside this list have voluntarily subjected themselves to the rigorous scrutiny of audits, not only accounting audits, but social audit, industrial audit, and as a part of their CSR activities, are doing in their own way various activities to reduce carbon footprint, improve water and energy use efficiency. NPC, who are hosting this today's workshop, has expertise in these areas, and we, as a part of our CSR, have requested them to cover a large number of MSMEs who otherwise cannot afford to get these audits done. We have requested them, and they have gone ahead and did about 60 such audits. And what is more gratifying is that all these 60 units with which we are in regular touch have reported better awareness now to see that whatever was recommended continues to be implemented, and they have savings in energy and water, and consequently have improved their bottom line. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. May I now invite Dr. Sudhir Kumar Vajpayee, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change for his address. Dr. Vajpayee is a domain expert in the field of environment who had an illustrious career of 19 years managing sustainability-related issues with a large public sector company of the country. Sir has been involved with the policy division of the ministry and has been assigned as an important task of setting up a centralized processing center in Pune. Sir, please, I invite you for your comments.
Respected dignitaries sitting on the dais, Director General PC, Shri Sandeep Kumar Nayak sir, Chairman Mumbai Port Trust, Rajiv Jalura sir, Dr. P.S. Law, Managing Director in Potash Limited, Madam Madhuri sitting there, Chairperson SEBI, Madam Sushma Keskar, Vishnu sir, and other esteemed delegates and participants sitting in this conference. A very warm greetings to all of you in this national conference on ESG or industry transformation, which is being jointly organized by Ministry of Environment, NPC, jointly with the Potash Limited as industry partner, Outlook Group, and Knowledge and Information partner. So as we all know that ESG is an acronym for environmental, social, and governance, and which takes a holistic view that sustainability extends beyond just not beyond the environmental issues. So it has actually evolved from historical movements that focused on typical health and pollution aspects. So whenever we talk about sustainability, we have been talking about, we just focus on the health and pollution aspects. But now, after this emergence of an evolution of this whole ESG concept, a framework has actually emerged, which helps stakeholders to understand how an organization is managing its risks and opportunities related to not only environmental but social and governance criteria. So ESG analysis has actually become an increasingly important part of the entire investment process, and it helps the investment professionals in gaining a fuller understanding of the companies in which they invest. So if you talk about concept of sustainability, so as I said, it's not a new thing. It's evolved over the years. But it's just that in post-COVID era, we have started to talk about it more and more. So, if popular definition, if you remember, it has been going on for the last 30, 40 years, that the sustainable business is basically a business approach for creating a long-term value by incorporating the elements of triple bottom line approach in the business objectives and creates profits for its stakeholders while protecting the environment and improving the lives of those who closely interact. So this approach has been there since long, but has not really made a big difference in the approaches of conduct of businesses. There is still exists a notion that spending on environmental conservation or social measures is like a philanthropic activity. But impact of COVID has actually shown us this stark reality that this cannot go on forever. And each one of us needs to make it everyone's business if we have to sustain ourselves. And of course, in that, businesses need to play a major role. So it is pertinent to mention here that last few decades have seen a significant increase in maturity of corporate reporting frameworks that have evolved over time and have been embraced internationally by leading businesses to promote, measure, and monitor sustainability performance, especially in their supply value chain. And these go beyond the financials of a company and are also referred to as sustainability reports. While they may vary in terms of detail and depth, they all have a few common features. One, that they cover a range of sustainable development issues, including environmental, social, and human rights issues. Two, many are investor-led, which indicates their interest to better assess risk and opportunities along these parameters. And three, the process of developing this framework is consultative, thereby reflecting the range of stakeholder expectations. But again, the number of businesses opting for such reporting are still not many, and it is imperative to understand that conserving or protecting environment or social issues is not only important for a healthy planet, but it is equally important for sustenance of business in the long run. And most companies fail to grasp the nuances of this concept, and that is why they are not able to galvanize their employees to integrate the entire ESG concept and sustainability into their everyday operations. But there are many who still believe that sustainability or the ESG, that is well-being of planet and its people, is important. Everyone realizes that, but it is someone else's problem. And that is what is reflected in many companies which have a sustainability department, and everyone points to that department as being responsible for everything sustainability related. So the companies who are global leaders in sustainability have made it clear that sustainability is the responsibility of everyone in the organization, and therefore have a more engaged and productive workforce, and they are profitable in the long run. So it is in this context that ESG reporting becomes important. It actually helps businesses to analyze the impact of their each and every activity on not only environment or society, but it also helps them to identify material risk and growth opportunity, and prompts them to take corrective action for their long-term business sustainability. So ESG reporting requirement is a, as we all know, that is a measure to ensure the principle that the businesses are not just asking to be trusted, but providing a measure of verification of how the trust is being fulfilled and how governments are guiding and enforcing the verification process. So the BRSR requirement mandated by SEBI is a step in that direction of providing verification means business contribution to society and planet welfare. So, in order to keep pace with global developments, SDGs and Paris Agreement on climate change and NVGs, so the guidelines were revised and the NGRBCs were notified in March 2019. And then after long deliberation in Ministry of Corporate Affairs, SEBI has come out with this BRSR in May 2021 for the top 1,000 listed companies. But as Sandeep Naik has very rightly said, the government of India has committed that India would reach its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt by 2030, 50% of its energy requirement to be met from renewable energy by 2030, reduce carbon emission by 1 billion ton by 2030. But how do we do that? So to address these issues and identify possible opportunities for sustainable development and work towards self-reliant India and Atmanirbhar Bharat in a productive way, this conference is being organized, and it's very, very timely, I would say, and the third in the series. But Ministry of Environment believes very strongly that the whole concept of compliance reportings, either for ESG or for other things, it should be self-regulatory and self-disciplined. And that is why it needs greater sensitization and potential customization of reporting. The reporting forms need to be very simple. In fact, Ministry of Environment has, in the last couple of years, we have been working on simplifying the forms, and each and every field that project proponent or the industries fill up, they should have clear idea why they are filling it, why that field is required. Similarly, when the reporting format is being designed by different agencies for the ESG, they should also work on the requirement of the data that they are going to capture, they are going to gather to analyze the ESG, because unnecessary capturing data is actually becomes a burdensome for the industries and project proponents to fill up those data. So therefore, with the shift of investors' paradigm towards sustainable investment, ESG related disclosures, regulatory compliance, and reporting, sustainability development of the community, it has become imperative for the Indian corporate now to become globally competitive, not only profitability, but also with its commitment to environmental and social development. And with the recent introduction of BRSSR, I'm sure that it will provide impetus to the initiative taken by the CPSCs and private players for sustainable development climate-related risk mitigation strategies. In the end, I would like to highlight that, in a nutshell, if I talk about three things emerge. First, we must care for our planet. Second, people are the biggest stakeholders. And third, profit is important. Because without it, businesses cannot survive. So, if this pandemic has taught us anything about how to overcome our socio-environmental challenge, it is that each one of us, as individuals, companies, or governments, need to take the ownership of our future. Being a spectator is no longer an option. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, sir. It's my pleasure to now invite Madam Madhavi Puri, Chairperson, Securities and Exchange Board of India, for the address. Ms. Buch has served as consultant to the New Development Bank of Shanghai, Head Office of Singapore Office of Private Equity Firm, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of ICICI Securities Limited, and Executive Director on the Board of ICICI. Madam holds an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management and Government. Madam, please. Second.
करे उधर ही उनके पास
A very good morning, sirs, madam. It's a pleasure to be here, and particularly on the subject of ESG, to be invited by the National Productivity Council, which has been doing energy audits, water audits, and waste disposal audits for many, many, many years. So they were well ahead of all of us in the ESG space. We are only just catching up, sir. So, with your indulgence, I would like to share a few thoughts on SEBI's approach to ESG and how we're thinking about it, both in the current context and how we expect it will evolve going forward. So, the very first thing I would like to share is that our approach is what we call a two-track approach. What are these two different tracks? The first track is for the entities which are the large entities in our environment, in our ecosystem, who are desirous of getting foreign capital. Now, if you want foreign capital, whether it is equity or debt or hybrids, the world will ask us to comply with the global standards for a very good reason, that they need to be able to compare different countries across the globe in order to determine their allocations. How much are they going to give to India, how much to Indonesia, how much to Korea, how much to UK, and so on. So, in many ways, as a country, as an economy that is capital deficient and which needs foreign capital, there is no alternative. This is what we will have to do, and therefore that track of aligning with global standards is absolutely essential for us. However, what is the second element of that two-track strategy is that we know and understand that this entire space of ESG, the way that it is evolving now, in the context of investment and movement of global capital, is relatively new. And new rules are being written as we speak. In this context, it is imperative that emerging markets like India, low-cost economies like India, have their own independent view of what ESG means to them. I would like to share one simple example in order to illustrate my point. So assume that there are two companies. One company, let's say in one of the developed countries, let's say in the US, let's say one is in India. They're both pharma companies, both make 10,000 tons of paracetamol. Let's assume they're equal. Let's assume that they are both equally energy efficient. So they both consume the same amount of energy per ton of paracetamol. All equal. Let us assume that they use the same kind of power. Let's assume that our unit is also in Himachal using largely hydroelectric power. Let's assume it's all green power. They both use renewable energy. Equal? Now, by any standards, these two companies should be treated equally on the eastward. But what happens is that in the markets, so the UN standards are actually consistent. They say yes, per ton of paracetamol, what is your emission intensity? No problem. But the minute we translate this into the markets, and because people like us who are in the markets need to convert everything into rupees and dollars, so we say the intensity must be measured as a unit of economic value, and therefore we say that now for comparability purposes, convert this emission into emission intensity per dollar of revenue. Now this is where the problem is. Because the minute we say that, we are ignoring the fact that in the US, a tablet of paracetamol costs 50 cents, and in India it costs 50 paisa, and therefore our companies will suddenly start looking 80 times worse than their counterparts in the US for no good reason. So it's extremely important. SEBI has been discussing this in various international fora, that the important thing is to convert intensity on a purchasing power parity basis. That is something that we should not lose sight of at all, and that is critical to the way in which emerging markets should look at the E part and also many aspects of S, but I won't go into that because the focus right now is on E. So we need to, as an emerging market, have our own narrative on this, and there is no way to have this narrative without data. And therefore the need for industry as a whole to start developing these metrics, starting with what is the purchasing power parity industry by industry by industry. So while at a global level, while at a currency level, we may have a purchasing power parity of 6 or 7 or whatever we have, but industry by industry, it could be a factor of as much as 80, 100 times. So this is really, really crucial, and therefore this importance of saying that we will follow both these tracks, the global alignment as well as adapting and adjusting our metrics and our reporting to also, this is an addition, it's an and, it's not an or, to also have a narrative for emerging markets which focuses on what is relevant and material for our markets. With that background, I would also like to share that the way in which SEBI is looking at the entire ESG space, it's like a three-legged stool. So while there is a lot of discussion around the corporates and their reporting requirements, and we discussed BRSR just now, there are two other important things, which is the ESG rating providers. Because like we have today credit rating providers, tomorrow the ESG rating providers will be giving scores to every company. And the reason it's important that this area be looked at very carefully is because unlike credit rating, where we have a history of hundreds of years and very structured data and structured rules by which credit rating is done, the ESG space is new, evolving, and if you actually look at the ESG rating of even large corporates in developed markets, you look at the ratings of 2 or 3 different rating providers, each of whom is independently respected, you find that they are often poles apart. So the rules have not yet emerged in any, I would say, concrete or very well-structured way. This is an evolving space, and therefore it's important that SEBI, as we work along with industry, we work along with the entire the ESG ecosystem, that this rating mechanism should evolve in a well-regulated manner so that no entity, no corporate entity is subject to ratings which are not well disclosed, methodologies are not well disclosed, or where it's sort of at the whims and fancies of people. No, there has to be a structure because these ratings are going to play a very, very important role in the future of our corporates. The third is the mutual funds in India. We already have ESG thematic schemes. So it's also important that the whole issue of greenwashing should not happen. So what is greenwashing? Greenwashing is basically an entity's E part of their ESG score being managed in a way to attract capital, whereas actually in substance it does not deserve. So it is very important that the investing entities like the mutual funds as well have certain important rules of disclosure and rules that they follow when they actually go to an investor and say that we have an ESG fund and please invest in it. What does that really mean? What is the investor really buying? Should be very, very transparently disclosed. So all these three legs of the stool are important for us to have an ecosystem that is stable. That is what the focus of SEBI is. The purchasing power parity issue I've already discussed. It's sort of the number one issue in our head in all global fora. Equally importantly is the importance of what is going to emerge going forward, which is the carbon credits market. Now, there has been discussion across the globe to say that there should be a single carbon credit market. We believe that that's not necessarily correct, again, from the perspective of emerging markets and particularly low cost economies. Because what does it mean? A carbon credit will become a commodity, let's say like a cup of coffee. Now, if in our economy we can produce a cup of coffee at 10 rupees, why should I not drink coffee at 10 rupees? Why should I be forced to buy Starbucks at $10? Right? So, similarly, when we have carbon credits which are generated in our country, in our jurisdiction, why should it be that there should be a single price for this carbon credit? It is like saying that everybody should have the same cup of coffee or the same currency, because going forward, carbon credits are going to become like a currency. And therefore, it will be an important issue for us as a sovereign to maintain independence over our carbon credits in terms of what and how we want to deal in them. And therefore, it is not necessary, and in fact, in our view, not desirable that there should be a single price of carbon credits across the globe. This slide is extremely important for us as a nation, as I mentioned and referred to earlier, that when we as a capital, in any case we are capital deficient, in any case we need to be able to attract global capital. But an even more important aspect of this capital is transition finance. As you know that in all global fora, a lot of discussion has happened on saying that a lot of the degradation of the environment that has not happened because of emerging markets. It has happened because of the developed nations. Now the problem is when we are trying to fix that. Now it is equally the responsibility of those nations who have gone through that cycle of polluting the planet to now assist the countries who are still going through that phase. So the question is that when there is transition, and as an industry we call it just transition, there should be an element of justice in it. Not everybody can transition in the same way because we are at different stages of our development. In order to facilitate this transition, finance is needed. And the need for this global finance to flow and the transition finance to flow is very, very critical. And therefore, back to what I said, that while we have our relevance of our track and what is important to us as a country, equally important for us to maintain the other track of global standards to facilitate the transition finance. This brings us to the question of standards. We're all familiar with the BRSR reporting that is required of the top 1,000 companies. I would like to refer to Mr. Bajpayee's reference to saying that sometimes, reporting just becomes reporting for the sake of reporting, and you don't even know why you're asking for this data, what are you going to do with that data. In our view, right now the BRSR reporting is benchmarked to global standards. However, we are very conscious of two things, actually three things. One is that mere reporting is not going to be enough. Very soon we're going to need to move into assurance, right? Which means a third party has to come and give some form of assurance, some kind of audit, in order to say that yes, what the reporting is being done is true and fair. The second is that in terms of the ESG structure itself, every entity going forward will also need to start reporting in phase 2 and phase 3 on their supply chain. So all their suppliers, all their dealers, so upstream, downstream, and there these might be a large number of MSMEs. So again, the role of the National Productivity Council and the need for simplification, and therefore, in SEBI, we had constituted a working group on this issue, and that group, I'm happy to say, has recently submitted a report which has brought out a concept of core BRSR, which means that it's a simplified version of the BRSR. It captures some of the key themes and it's relatively short. So the mandate to the group was no more than 10 parameters. Of course, they struggled and struggled, and then they finally made 10, but with 3 sub-points each. That's all right. So we are at 30 compared to hundreds and hundreds. So this is going to be, the core BRSR. And going forward, when we look at issues like, when we look at assurance, what we are going to really have is a roadmap and a glide path for industry. So at the first stage, what will be required in terms of assurance will be the core BRSR, and the other aspects of BRSR will be again voluntary assurance, because again, it's the top companies who are in a position to attract global capital will automatically move into that, but we would like to give the rest of the ecosystem more time to really move. In summary, I would like to say that, as has been said earlier, ESG in itself is not new, but the way in which we are looking at it is new. And there are now, today as we observe, there are 4 drivers of why the corporate sector is moving towards ESG. The first, because I'm a markets person, so I'll always start with the markets. The first is the markets, because if the markets say we will give you capital and cheaper capital if you are better ESG compliant, then that's a big driver for all corporates to adopt ESG strategies. The second is value creation. The point that was made about this results in cost saving. Right? This is what the National Productivity Council has been doing for years and years when it does an energy audit or a water audit. All its recommendations go to improving the bottom line of that entity, because obviously if you consume less power, it's just not just lower emissions, but it's also more money to the bottom line. So there is the whole value creation aspect of it. The third, of course, is responsibility, because again, as has been said, we have become acutely aware that nature has its limits, it has its bursting points, and we as human species cannot push it beyond that level. And for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, we do need to leave a somewhat green and a somewhat blue planet. So it is our responsibility to do that, and that's what we must do. And then the reason why regulation comes and why people comply in terms of regulation is because there needs to be a level playing field, and people need to follow certain minimum basic standards. In terms of SEBI, it's always more disclosure based because we are a disclosure based regime. But once those standards are in place and the regulations are in place, all the other 3 pieces start to fit together and then move together as a cohesive group. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your enlightening address. As we conclude the conversation, may I invite Dr. Sushma Keskar, President, Pune Divisional Productivity Center, to propose the vote of thanks. Dr. Keskar has been associated with academics for about 42 years. She retired as principal of SNT Arts and Commerce College for Women, Pune, in December 2012, and since then she is working as a professional counselor and handling all sorts of counseling cases. Madam, please. dignitaries on the dais, august audience present in the auditorium and on virtual platform. Good morning to all of you and greetings from Pune Divisional Productivity Council. PDPC has 63 years long association with NPC. We started functioning in the year 1959 at the initiative of the visionary late Sri R. Raghuvat, founder of Maratha Chamber of Commerce, Pune. The baton was then handed over to late Dr. P.C. Shishwalkar, father of management education movement in the state of Maharashtra. We are always working hand in hand with NPC in the areas of training, consultancy, and problem solving in industries. Friends, I am here to propose vote of thanks. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers of this program for giving me an opportunity to do this pleasant duty. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India and NPCU have jointly organized this national conference with Indian Potash Limited as industry partner. This initiative of National Conference on ESG for industry transformation is really the need of the hour. We are all glad to be part of this initiative. That is why here we can see fairly large gathering of professionals, practitioners, senior and middle level managers of corporates who are associated in the areas of ESG, BRSR, and sustainable development. I am thankful to Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Nayak, IAS Director General, NPC, for organizing this program and also for his welcome remarks in the inaugural session. My wholehearted thanks are due to the following dignitaries: Mr. Jivesh Nandan, Senior Advisor NPC, Ms. Madhavi Puri Bhuj, Chairperson SEBI, Mr. Sujit Kumar Vajpayee, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India, Mr. Rajiv Jalota, IAS, Chairman, Mumbai Port Authority, Dr. P.S. Gahlot, Managing Director, Indian Potash Limited. These dignitaries have delivered special addresses throwing light on different facets of ESG that are important for industry transformation. Thanks are also due to the members of press and media for their active presence. I am sure all of us are now eager to attend the next two sessions, culminating into the valedictory session. So I take your leave now. Thank you once again.
Sorry, to the vote of thanks, I am jumping to the dais, the stage to convey my special thanks to our chief guest, Ms. Madhavi Puri. She has really taken her time and her intellectual space to address this gathering and situating the way forward where we are headed in a global context. Yesterday when I met her, she said that we have to look at the bigger picture, not count the trees. We have to look at the woods. Thank you, Madam, for outlining this bigger picture and where all of us, we as the National Productivity Council and other stakeholders, including media, what role we have to play and how we have to meet the overall goal of net zero in 2070. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, sir. As a mark of respect, I request Shri Bhardwaji to please present a memento to Madam Bush. I also request Bhardwaji to please present a memento to all the dignitaries on the dais, please. May I now request the dignitaries on the dais to please join together for the group photograph. Thank you all. We will now break for tea for about 15 minutes and will resume with the first technical session at 11:45. Thank you so much.